Good morning and welcome to Life at Noon. I am so excited. This morning we have with us the fantastic Dorrie Scott, who is also a reference librarian here, and she has some specialties in technology and graphic design, are some of her focus interests as well as copyright. And this morning she's actually here to talk about something that we see on TV and we hear on the radio all the time, and you even get ads for on your social media, which is talking about protecting your identity from identity theft. And that is actually something that I know I've had moments of concern about. I think pretty much everybody has. So Dorrie, if you would, take it away, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dorrie Scott. I'm a full-time reference librarian here at Sci-Fair, and I'm just going to go over some basics of protecting your identity with you today. There is a lot in the presentation, and we're not going to talk about every single thing on every slide, but there's some good information that you'll be able to go back and look at and read more in depth, and then do your own research on to kind of figure out what you need to do to help protect yourself. So before we start, I always tell everybody, when you use anything on the internet, you are putting yourself at risk. And I know there's a lot of people who are like, they just, they don't like to do anything that seems new technology wise because they feel they're more at risk. And it is true, you probably are, but I equate a lot of that to the same thing as when the car was invented. Cars are great. Cars get us places really fast. They cut our travel time down. But cars come with inherent risk. Every time you get into a car, you are at risk. And so, you have to wear your seatbelt. You have to obey the speed limit laws. There's all these precautions that you learn to mitigate any potential problems you might have. So using the internet, protecting your identity is the same thing. Yes, there are inherent risks every time you go out and use your credit card or you're online at a online shopping store, but there are things that you can do to try to lessen, the possibility of something bad happening and kind of limit your risk. There is no 100% foolproof way of limiting your risk, perhaps except maybe going off grid. And so these are just to try to help you kind of look at your online life, your identity, and what you can do to protect yourself as much as possible. So having said that, this is from the Federal Trade Commission, and I just really liked the quote: "You are more likely to have your identity stolen than your car or home burglarized." And so, it's unfortunately now the number one type of fraud that is reported to the FTC. And we'll look at some numbers in just a second. But it is a huge and growing problem, both domestically and globally. So I know that Rachel gave us like a whole hour, but really, I'm just going to do this in 2 minutes. No, just a couple of key things to look at. As of last year, identity theft was the number one complaint with the FTC. So 1.4 million reports. Tax fraud increased by 225%. And with that tax fraud, and we'll talk about this in just a second, identity theft and fraud are you can't have one without the other a lot of times. Government benefit fraud increased by 2,920%. So that's not your imagination. That is a huge number. And the big number here really is the identity fraud losses were $56 billion. This is growing massively, exponentially. And so it's really serious, and it is something that everybody needs to be aware of and take, if nothing else, just some basic precautions to try to protect your identity and mitigate the risk that come along with it. So Just a couple of big picture stats. Identity fraud did cost Americans $56 billion, and that's Americans. That's not even a global number. That's domestically. 49 million consumers were victims of identity theft or fraud. 13 billion of that was due to just people stealing your information, people stealing your credit card, people grabbing your passwords off a data breach. But the majority of it was actually due to scams, where people are getting your information through robocalls and email links that you're not supposed to be clicking on. And so just a general breakdown of how it's kind of currently trending, at least in the United States. Okay, so I know when I first started researching this, I actually had a difficult time figuring out, okay, well, they're talking about identity theft, then they talk about identity fraud, and the numbers that you'll see can be a little confusing because different people sort of identify it different ways, and there's different methods of calculating those numbers. So I liked this particular breakdown from Javelin. And so honestly, they should flip the two sides because identity theft is considered when someone steals your personal information, even if they don't do anything bad with it. If they've stolen your identity, that is identity theft. If they've taken your information through illegal means, it's theft. Once that information, though, is then used for some sort of illegal gain through fraud or what else, then it's considered identity fraud. So when we say identity theft and we say identity fraud, there are distinctions, but oftentimes they're just used interchangeably for the same thing. We're talking about when somebody steals your information and does something bad with it. So what is identity theft? Someone takes your personal info, the theft, uses it without permission, which is the fraud, and those can damage your finances, your credit history, and your reputation. And I know you're probably wondering, well, how is that damaging my reputation? But we'll talk about that in just a little bit. All right, just to give you guys an idea of how exponentially this is increasing, you can actually see in 2018, identity theft only went up 20% from the year before, 2017. And then you have over a 50% jump to 2019, it went up 46%. And then in 2020, it went up 113%. So, 2020 was not a good year for a number of reasons. And identity theft actually is a really big one. A lot of scams, a lot of frauds, a lot of identity theft stemming from things that were going on during 2020. So it's a growing problem, again, domestically and globally. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to run through some basic parts of this. Who is a victim? How are people stealing your information? What happens as a result of that? Things that you can look for to kind of tell if someone has possibly taken your information, how to reduce your risk, and then what to do if it actually happens. And statistically speaking, unfortunately, there's a good chance it might happen. And if not to you, to somebody else. And so this information is just really good to even share with friends and family and neighbors so they can help protect themselves as well. Okay, so who can be a victim of identity theft? Adults, children, perhaps somebody older, somebody younger. The important thing to remember is that absolutely everyone is a potential victim of identity theft. And I, have jokingly said that even death won't get you out of this, because stealing people's identities after they are deceased has actually been something that's been around for hundreds of years, if not longer. So living or dead, you are a potential victim of identity theft. And even after you're, gone, identity theft is actually still a problem, because if you have a spouse or a partner that is on the same financial records as you, and someone has stolen your identity and run up charges, and that spouse is then, or partner is then responsible for your debt, then it actually still remains an issue for them. So it is a problem, you know, before and after. And so it's really something that you want to make sure is taken care of, you know, the minute you find out it's happened. The other thing too is children. A lot of people don't think about identity theft with children, but it's actually probably one of the biggest growing sectors, because I don't remember exactly how long ago it started, but all children are now issued a social security number at birth. And the second that social security number is issued, they are a potential victim. And the problem with identity theft in children is that oftentimes they and their families don't even realize it's happened until they turn 18 and they go to apply for a credit card, or maybe even just a couple of years before that, like 15 or 16, when they go to apply for a job. So looking out for your children's identity is actually super important. And there are things that you can do beforehand to make sure that no one's stolen their identity and you don't find out about it for a decade or two. So just some basic breakdowns, just by state, who has the most identity theft. If you want to, in your mind, take a guess about where Texas might lie, top 5, top 10, top 20. You know, we like to say everything's bigger in Texas. This is probably one of those things that we wish was smaller. And so, you know, unfortunately, it's just a massively growing issue here. I think there are probably a few reports out there that break it down as to the types of theft and again, by city and state. This is just sort of a general area. And I'm not sure what it is, but if you notice, everything's kind of, you know, in the South, you know, be it East, Central, or West, you know, and then those upper states, I don't know, perhaps they're just not online, but there's much less identity theft the further north you get. So it's kind of interesting to look at. And then by age, and I think a lot of times when we are talking about identity theft, I think, you know, there are perhaps some stereotypical ideas about who might be a victim of identity theft. And so the numbers are actually quite interesting when you look at them. 30 to 39-year-olds, or millennials kind of coming in like right underneath, are actually the highest group of reported identity theft cases. So, you know, I know that perhaps there's a stereotype that, you know, we need to look out for grandma and grandpa because they're maybe a little bit older and perhaps not as technically savvy, but statistically speaking, they're actually less at risk of identity theft than their younger counterparts. Now, having said that, when you look at the actual dollar amounts per case, they typically are higher in older individuals. I believe the 70 to 79 range actually had the highest dollar amount. So the amount they lose is higher, but fewer of them are being, you know, falling victim to identity theft. So, you know, you kind of have to, there's different ways of looking at these numbers. And so, and I didn't find a breakdown by gender, but I know that there's some reports out there that even break this down by gender, by state. And so there's a million different ways you can look at these numbers. And I have some resources at the end of the program where you can actually go to several different sites and look at these numbers in a variety of different ways. Okay, so how does it happen? How are people taking your information? Some of these are old school. They've literally been around for forever. Some of them are a lot newer, you know, based on technology. But, you know, the tried and true method, people steal your personal belonging, your wallet, your purse. I know somebody who had this happen to them in a retail store. Someone asked them for a recommendation for something, so she turned away from her cart where her purse was sitting, and that person had a partner who, when she wasn't looking, took her wallet out of her purse. She never even knew about it until she finished shopping that day and went to go check out and realized that her wallet was gone. And the store then had to go look at the video and actually see what had happened. So again, that method's been around for forever. People will steal stuff from your trash and from your office or business. Mail theft used to be a much bigger problem than it is today. Older neighborhoods still have individual mailboxes, and so that is definitely something that you have to be very careful of, because if you've got incoming mail with credit cards and checks and stuff, that can be at risk. Newer neighborhoods tend to have those group mailboxes where you have to have a key, so those are usually a little bit more secure. But there is a sort of common knowledge, I guess, bit of trivia that when you put your trash out, for the most part, it's considered public domain. Now, there was a case in Texas I read about where someone stole something from somebody else's trash. They ended up taking them to court, and the Texas courts actually ruled that, in this case at least, they were determining that when the person put their trash out, they were transferring ownership from themselves to the waste management company that was designated to come pick it up. Now, I don't know that that would be the case for every instance of this, but it's kind of why you see in the movies all the time people going through other people's trash, and it's not illegal, because in most states it is not. Once you put your trash out, anybody can go through it. Kind of like, we all put something we're trying to get rid of out on the curb, a desk, a chair, something we don't want, people take it. But people will steal stuff from your trash, from the trash of businesses, or from the actual offices themselves, from a legal office or a healthcare provider. So, stealing actual files and things like that. They will basically, pull scams. They will pretend to be, a potential job or a loan or apartment information officer to get your information. So people just, pretending to be somebody else, imposter scams, calling to get your info or emailing you to get your info. And then, of course, the one that more people, I think about when they think about identity theft is stealing your information online, either by data breaches when they, hack into a company's site and they find all your personal info, or through malware that perhaps they, somehow get onto your computer and they steal it straight from your personal device. So there's, different ways. But those are kind of just a general breakdown of the different ways people are getting your information. There's tons of variations, but these are just, general guidelines to kind of think about. So think about, where is your wallet? Where is your purse? Okay, because if they're going to steal it, they have to find it. So they're at the grocery store, they're at the retail stores. Ladies, I know we all often put our purse in the cart and then we turn around to go get something off of a shelf. Unfortunately, that is the perfect time for someone to just do the old-fashioned grab your purse, your wallet, etc. At gyms or any place where you have a locker where you're temporarily storing things, maybe just for 30 minutes or an hour. Super easy. I know what you're thinking. Public libraries. I always say I'm always amazed by the number of people who will leave their laptop sitting out on a table unattended for 5 or 10 minutes. And I know this because I'll watch them sometimes to see how long it takes them to come back. And we're a public building and we want everybody to come in and we want everybody to have a good time and be safe. But I always tell everybody, you know, if you went to Walmart, would you put your personal laptop out on a table and then walk away? And most people would, you know, say no, they wouldn't. And so there's really no difference between that and the public library. If you're at a public place, don't leave your stuff unattended, period. I don't care how different the environment may seem, it's still a public place. And it may not even have the security that some of those other places may have. And so your stuff is actually more at risk, not less. So, you know, we want everybody to be safe, and just be aware of your surroundings and your environment. Doctor's offices, people are actually looking for stuff there, things that you've left behind, or you know, you leave your personal chair to go to the bathroom, something like that. Just way too easy to go into an office building where there's a million doctor's offices, go sit down and pretend that you're waiting for an appointment. So, you know, be wary of all the places that you're visiting. Obviously, if you go to some kind of outdoor place, you know, honestly, you probably shouldn't try to carry a purse or a wallet, or try to do it in such a way that it's not something that can be grabbed and taken from you. And then, of course, your car. I'm sure you all see the videos on the news or local Facebook groups and things like that of people's doorbell cameras, you know, people stopping and checking cars to see if they're unlocked. And I know somebody that this happened to, and I'm not going to name names, but it's the same person who had their wallet stolen at the store. They left their car unlocked, and thieves came by, and for whatever reason, that my friend, this person I know, had left their wallet in their car, and they took it. And so I was just, you know, once bitten, you know, twice bitten. You know, these are really easy ways to have your identity stolen, and they're really easy ways to stop from happening. So we're going to go over some ways of mitigating having your information taken. Things people will look for in your trash. And none of this is really new information. It's really a lot of common sense. They're looking for your ID cards, your bank and credit cards, your bank and credit card statements, pre-approved credit offers. Those are really nice, because then they can get cards in your name and you don't even realize it at first. Old checks, because they can get your account numbers, your tax information. Tax theft is actually a thing. I'll be honest with you, it's not even something I really thought about until I was looking into this. And they're looking for your old electronic devices, because if they're not properly wiped or destroyed, they can get your personal information off of there as well. So again, nothing really earth-shattering here. The things that you would typically think of. They will call and email you. So they're going to pose as a bank or a credit card company, IRS, the police, government offices, lawyers, debt collectors, healthcare providers. You know, and a lot of these are really official type of places. And so they're the type of places where when they ask you for that personal information, you're probably more apt to give it out. And this is really important, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in a bit, but do not give out your personal information over the phone or through email. And we'll talk about ways to contact these places to verify they really are who they are. And keep in mind too that, you know, if it seems too good to be true, that's because it is too good to be true. And keep in mind that some of these will sound really, really convincing. I personally have had someone pose as a lawyer calling me, telling me about a potential case that was not about me, but that my name or address was being used in, and I needed to immediately call them to verify some information. And it was a good scam. I mean, it sounded really legit. But again, it was just one of those things where I don't really think that's how this works. So take everything with a grain of salt. And so we'll talk about this a little bit more. And then thieves are also going to look for that information online. You know, public social media post. We'll talk about this. There's no need to share with the world everything about you. Online shopping accounts, when you put in your information, be it your address, your credit card, etc. Any other business accounts you have, they can get information from. Health accounts actually was something that I had not even been aware of that people were actually trying to find, because health fraud is a huge part of identity theft now, and we'll talk about that. Government accounts, people basically stealing other people's social security checks, things like that. And so this little image just kind of broke down some of the tactics most used for each of these age groups. Now, again, these are just very, very general ways that the people might be taking advantage of others. So just something to be aware of. But you'll notice, like, in that kind of 24 to 40 and 41 to 65 group, there's a lot of stuff, robocalls and the text. Whereas the younger group, the 11 to 24, social media. And then in the older group, maybe less text and email, maybe because they're just, less into it. And so it's more phone calls. And then it even tells you the triggers, the types of things that they're asking you about. Because based on your age, which is not hard to find out online, they can figure out what types of things you're probably dealing with at that age or at that time. And then those are the things they're going to use to try to trick you into giving out your information. So be wary. Okay, so we've talked about the ways that they can get your information, and we've talked about the things that they're looking for. So these are just a few of the things that they're going to do with that information if they get it. They can steal your tax refunds once they get the appropriate information. This one actually completely surprised me, I'll be honest with you. They can pretend to be you if arrested, because if they've managed to get all of your information and they have fake documents created and they get arrested, that arrest record is going to go down with your name on it. So that actually totally threw me. They can complete a change of address form to divert your mail. And the sad part is that honestly, anybody could do that at any point. To change the mailing address for somebody, it's not as hard as you might think. There is a sort of a screener on it now where I think they'll charge your credit card $1, and they put the dollar back in, but it's to confirm that the mailing address on the credit card is the same as your address. Of course, the problem is that if they've already managed to get a credit card in your name because they stole one of those pre-approved credit card applications, then it's actually not hard for them to get all of your mail now. So unfortunately, there's sort of a chain reaction that happens once they can get one piece of information and then kind of go from there. They can fraudulently obtain your credit report. So they now know all of your accounts, and they can try to get all of that information to start charging onto those accounts and then have it sent to their address. And of course, the thing that probably most people think about now, especially with data breaches, is they're selling your information. So some of these thieves might be stealing your information and they're using it for themselves. But one of the bigger consequences is selling your information online so that hundreds, thousands of people can now do those same bad things with your information. And the super sad part really is that there are cases where you can go on the dark web and they're selling credit card information for 50 cents. Because keep in mind, once somebody has that credit card number and that super duper special 3-digit security code on the back, they can go online. So it was really disturbing how cheaply a lot of the stuff can be bought online, which also shows you why it's so prevalent, because it is so cheap for thieves to be able to accomplish. So you really have to take some precautions to deal with that. And just some more of the more specific things they can do. Once they have your bank account, they can counterfeit checks or debit cards to your actual account. In turn, they could actually open up a new bank account in your name, write back checks on it, and you don't even know about it at first. Same thing with the credit cards. They can open up a new credit card account in your name. And again, you're not going to find out about it until the bill doesn't get paid and they start coming to you for payment. They can buy cars and other high ticket items. There was even a report on one of the big 3 news stations about this happening with children's social security numbers. People buying cars and property using social security numbers from children and taking out loans in their names. And again, no one realizes it's even happening for years because they're children and they don't even go to use their social security number for anything until they're probably 15 or 16 at the earliest. So it literally can be a decade before anybody even realizes something has happened. They will take out phone or wireless service in your name, which you're like, well, if that's the worst thing they can do, how bad is that? But you know, they can rack up thousands of dollars of charges, which, you know, you're then responsible for until you can prove that it wasn't you. They can get medical treatments in your name. And I found this one fascinating because I think we've all gotten medical bills. We're like, why am I getting this? I don't even remember getting this treatment. Or didn't I already pay for this? So there are ways for them to use your information to get medical treatments, and then you're getting the bill. So it's very important that you actually look at those statements that you get to find out if everything looks legit. And then kind of going back to, like, you know, they can be arrested under your name. Well, they can also get a job in your name, because once they've gotten your information and they've gotten fake credentials, they can go get a job in your name, which means anything that they do while, you know, in that job under your name, or any of these things that they've done, those kind of go back to that reputation that we were talking about. You know, if someone's getting a job in your name and doing something horrible, or they're getting arrested under your name, then, you know, that may not be directing you it may not be affecting you directly in a financial manner, but it is affecting your reputation, and indirectly that can then turn, you know, affect you financially. So just really quickly, a couple of numbers. What it costs a business when someone is the victim of identity theft, and the amount of time that that person loses at work. So while affecting the business, it's also affecting you, because you as an individual would lose that amount of work time. But this was just one infographic I found talking about what can be possibly lost when having to deal with a single case of identity theft, and the amount of work that you would lose should you have to deal with it. So, but on a more personal note, this is what I actually found interesting. 26 to 32, so a quarter to a third of people who are victims of identity theft spend 4 to 6 months dealing with it. You know, that's just, you know, it's crazy. 10 to 25% spent 7 months to a year. And again, these were just like the majority. I'm sure there are some that are much less. I'm sure I've seen, you know, heard about cases on the news where, you know, it took years later. And so depending on what's happened, one stat said that victims spend anywhere from 3 to over 5,800 hours having to repair damage caused by their, you know, having their identity stolen. So, and the average was 330. And frankly, I do not want to spend 330 hours having to, you know, unravel the horrible things that somebody may have done, you know, in my name, to my credit, through money they've stolen from my accounts, or money that someone says I now owe them that I don't. So there is a time component of this in addition to the actual financial components. So just to kind of give you a basic idea, the average loss for somebody was anywhere from $1,800 to $14,000 in wages, meaning you had to take time off from work and not get paid in order to deal with this. People also then spent around $1,800 to $1,400, in fees trying to get it taken care of. Almost 25% of people never got reimbursed for those personal expenses. There was no way to recoup those losses. And close to 50% of anybody who's ever had their identity stolen then has a much more difficult time getting a loan or credit because of the identity theft. So, even if they don't take a single, dollar, or you get every dollar back, getting those things off your credit record and proving it's not you, can be a very, very time consuming process and can have long-term effects on you trying to get a house or a car or things like that. And then just in general, just a couple of quick numbers. In 2019, there were over 1,400 data breaches. And a data breach is when a hacker goes into a company's records and steals all of the information. So you hear about different ones over the course of, different ones over time, but the biggest one was probably the Experian breach, which was actually kind of ironic given that it was a credit reporting company whose records were actually exposed. So the irony there is not lost on many of us. But because of that, the company itself actually offered free credit checking for millions of people, for at least a couple of years. 60% of the victims whose identity is stolen due to the breaches, it's used to open a new credit card account in your name, and then they run it up and don't pay it, and then someone comes after you to recoup the loss. And then some just general numbers. You can see how those numbers are again increasing from 20% to almost 50% to 120%. The identity theft numbers are growing so fast that it is now the #1 type of fraud committed in the United States for the first time in 2020. And so last year, it even said that just due to imposter scams, there were losses of $667 million, which was about $700 per case, to just give you some general numbers on what's happening. All right, so things to look for. Have you checked, your credit reports? Have you checked your statements? I know sometimes we tend to just get those in and we kind of give them a cursory glance and then that's kind of it. But 38 to 50% of victims don't discover that their identity's been stolen until for like up to 3 months. Up to 18%, so almost 20%, 1 out of 5, don't even realize that their identity's been stolen for up to 4 years. Meaning someone's been doing something bad with your information for 4 years before it's discovered. So what can you do? What can you look for? What are the signs that someone may be using your identity? Check those statements. Are there mistakes on your accounts, your benefits? Are you getting charges for treatments you didn't have? Are you getting random notices from the IRS about something not being paid or something being due? Are you getting calls or mail about accounts in your child's name? If your child gets a credit card offer, check their account, because in order to get it, they had to have found their information somewhere. So that's a huge red flag. Bills go missing. A bill that should have come in never made it to you. Or you're getting calls from debt collectors for debts that you never actually created. And then calls or emails from companies or websites that you did not visit or register an account. And phishing and mail scams are still one of the biggest things out there today. And we'll talk about this just in a minute, but when you sign up or register for a lot of accounts from different companies, they will then sell your information, and they're not even doing it illegally. Most of us aren't reading those privacy policies that we agree to when we sign up. And usually in that privacy policy, there is in very tiny print something that mentions that they are going to sell your information to a third party. The other way, of course, is that through a data breach, they're then selling that information, and unscrupulous places are then calling and emailing you, trying to get you to give out more personal information. So, always be wary of any call or email from somebody you've never heard of, never visited their website or anything like that. All right, so you can reduce your risk. And really, honestly, it's nothing truly earth-shattering. It's really a lot of common sense things, and then a few specific things that you can do to really sort of try to be as secure as possible. Again, understanding that there's no 100% way of ever being completely not at risk. It just doesn't happen. So and I thought it was kind of funny that they equated it to buckling your seatbelt. This is actually from the FTC, because that's actually the analogy that I've used for years. And locking your doors at night. Nothing earth-shattering. It's just a lot of little things that you can do to make it as hard as humanly possible for someone to get your info. So don't leave your stuff up unattended. Buy a lock. I actually looked them up online. You can buy them for less than $5. Don't leave your purse and stuff out at the gym or at work. Lock it up. Lock your car and house. I have some relatives from the Midwest who don't lock their cars, and it literally just astounds me every time. So lock your car. Don't leave anything in your car. Lock up your important papers in your house. Although again, your identity theft is more likely than someone breaking into your house, but again, let's not make it easy for people if they get in. And then, yeah, I even put for the purse, wallet, literally, for anyone, even the public library, don't leave it unattended. Trash your trash. When you put all those statements that you're throwing away into the trash that people are going to take, make it much, much harder for them, or make it so that they don't even want to bother. Cut, tear, or shred all those documents that have information on them. Shredders are available for less than $35, or scissors, or just use your hands. Sometimes just doing it by hand can be enough. Wipe your devices. Most mobile devices and computers have built-in options to erase and reset the device, keeping in mind that even that does not completely actually erase all of your information. A good hacker can actually get it off. So I jokingly put in here, hammers cost less than $5, but a lot of people will advise that you actually take the hard drive or chip out of the device and destroy it physically, so that nobody can pull the information back off of it. I put on here, play hard to get, but it's true. You don't have to talk to people. When people phone you or email you and you don't recognize the number, don't answer. There is nothing that says you have to answer your phone. I will not answer my phone if I do not recognize the number or the person, period. If it's important, they'll leave me a message. And 99% of the time, those are scam messages, because I will listen to them. And only if it's my doctor's office or something like that do I call them back. And I often won't call the number they show. I will look them up. So the number that you see on your phone isn't necessarily the number they're really calling from. There is a term, and for the life of me, I can't remember what it is right now, where it basically pretends that another number is calling. So when someone says, hey, this is so-and-so and I want you to call me back, look that name or person up online and see if the number there matches the one they gave, or even look up their number online and see, does that go to the company it says it's going to? So, there are different ways that you can verify who these people are. when you get an email from somebody and it says, from the IRS, if you hover your mouse over that email, you can usually see the actual address of the person sending it. And so if it says, John Doe 42 at gmail.com, that's probably not the IRS. So, again, look up the name of the person and place online and verify that's really them. Don't click on anything unless you absolutely positively know who it's from. It is still the number one way to get malware on your computer, which is how they get in and steal your information or even hijack your computer. And no matter what, do not give out your social security number. Most reputable places may ask you to verify the last 4 digits. And so, which is understandable because they need to make sure that they're not actually violating your privacy, by giving out your information to somebody who's not you, but they have to have a way to check it. But it is extremely rare for probably any place to actually need to have your entire social security number. So if someone asks for it, ask them some questions. No one says you just have to hand it over. Ask them why they need it. How are they going to use it? I would even say, maybe ask them to verify who they are. Again, don't just hand it out because once they have that number, there's so much they can do with it. Don't overshare. When you're on a social media site, I'm sure a lot of you have taken those Facebook quizzes where, what's your favorite number and what's your favorite color and who was your best friend in junior high? And all of those things, if you think about it, are probably all the things that when we make up passwords, we're using. So, it's my dog's name and the street I grew up on, or it's, my best friend from 3rd grade and the year I was born. So all those little random quizzes that you take, I'm not saying don't do them, but just know that every time you do that, you're giving out a lot of information about yourself. And so one thing you can do too is make your social media accounts private. Unless you're a celebrity, probably it's okay to make your account private so that not everybody else can find you. When you do have to register for a site and use your email, I highly recommend creating a second email address that you can use to just register for those random sites. There's even websites out there where you can create an email account that's only good for 10 minutes. So like if you want to, a lot of those online shopping sites, especially for furniture, you have to create an account before they'll even let you look through the site. So there's different things you can do. Have second or third emails that you use for, accounts that you're not sure if you're going to keep using or not. Make things private. Read those privacy policies, because a lot of time in those privacy policies, it actually clearly states they're going to sell your email address to everybody in the world. So you're going to start getting emails from 8 million people, and some of them are not going to be good. Let's see, read your statements, look for things that you didn't charge or, treatments you didn't get, things like that. This is probably the number one thing. It's kind of a tie from the next item. You can monitor and freeze your credit report. Everyone is legally eligible for one free credit report every year. And the number here is included in the website. You can also freeze your credit reports. And a lot of people did this after the Experian breach, and I myself was actually one of them. And what you do is you individually go to the 3 main credit bureaus. They have an option. You can literally Google freeze my credit report and you'll find the sites that take you there. You get it all set up, and what happens then is that no one can pull your credit report. So if someone is trying to take out a credit card in your name, and the first thing that credit card company is going to do is pull your credit report, they can't. It's actually blocked. Now, that does mean that when you legitimately go to do something, you have to unfreeze your credit report. So I bought a car 2 years ago. So I actually called the car company and said, I need to know, what company you're going to run my credit report through. And then I went in and I unfroze my credit report in just that one company. When we bought a house, I actually unfroze it from all three companies. But what's nice is that you can actually say to unfreeze it for a certain number of days, and then it will automatically refreeze. So if you're making a big purchase that you know that someone's going to be running your credit report, you can lift it temporarily. But this then means that no one just randomly throughout the year is going to be pulling your credit report without your knowledge. So it's free. It is super easy to set up. And I think probably one of the absolute best ways you can help protect from identity theft. The other thing is sort of a physical protection. Protect your computer and your devices. If you don't have virus protection software on your computer, immediately after watching this program, you need to download one. AVG is probably the most well-known free provider of antivirus software. It may not have every bell and whistle available, that some of these other companies do, but it's free. And so if nothing else, it should be the first thing you download. There are some other companies that offer paid services, and usually there's some other bells and whistles involved other than just protecting you from malicious viruses and malware. And I listed a couple of them in a general price range, and you can look them up and see what each one offers and what might be useful to you. And I'll give you a little hint on some of these sites. If you go to pretend like you're going to buy it, and then you don't, and you go to leave the website, sometimes they will pop up little discounts, giving you a discount if you go ahead and buy it then before you leave. So just something to look for. Download protection on your phone or your tablet for phone calls. A lot of them are really good at identifying spam or possible spam to let you know that this is probably a bad person calling. And you can actually purchase identity theft services and insurance. These are companies that actually actively look for your information on the dark web to alert you that it's out there and that somebody could be using it. And there's even some places that offer identity theft insurance should it happen to you. So I listed a couple of the larger named companies that you can investigate, but again, you're gonna have to look up each one, see what it offers, and see if the price that they're offering it at is something that's in your pocketbook. But look into the different ways that you can actually protect your identity. And then just really briefly, again, look for browser password alerts, make sure you've got a password turned on. Don't use public Wi-Fi's unless you have a VPN, because if it's a public Wi-Fi, that means anybody can get into it. And so again, if you're coming to the library, something to think about. So don't log into your bank account while on the public Wi-Fi. Protect your accounts, use strong passwords. I know it says don't use the same password more than once, which, let's face it, we all do. But try to maybe vary it up a little bit. And again, consider that extra email account for accounts that require registration. If you get a notice from the IRS, immediately contact them. Make sure that you do it quickly so that if there's something wrong or something's done something on your account, you can get to it as soon as humanly possible. And then in addition to contacting the IRS, you can actually also contact the three companies. And what's interesting is, I didn't know this beforehand, as long as you call one of them and place a fraud alert on there, they are required by law to notify the other two companies. So you actually only have to call one to start with, just to get the fraud alert on there, so that they immediately all start looking. Then when you can, directly report it to all three. You're going to need to fill out some reports. You need to file a police report. You need to file with the FTC so that the identity theft report is out there. And then just here's some basic websites and numbers. If you need more information, or if it happens to you and you need to get more information about what to do. That's really all I have for you guys today. And I know there was a huge amount of material in a very short period. And so at the end, the last slide, which you guys can see when you actually download the presentation. I've given you a bunch of sites that you can go to look into this more. I've given you some stat sites where you can really kind of look at the numbers and how they are where you live, and broken down by different demographics. But again, the thing with identity theft really is it's common sense stuff. Just assume that, you know, if there's a way that somebody could get it, they're going to try. And so your job is, just as a responsible citizen, is to just try to make that as hard as humanly possible. And just simple things like using a password, using software on your computer. Don't answer the phone from people that you don't know. Don't respond to emails or click on links from people you don't know. You know, and those will mitigate your risk significantly. Keep in mind too that I am not a legal expert or a financial expert or anything like that. So anything you see in here, you know, you really have to look at yourself. You have to investigate it yourself and decide what's best for you to do or not do, and talk to professionals about ways that you can protect yourself, and what to do if something should happen. So I think that is all I have for you guys today.
Hey, thank you so much, Dorrie, for coming and giving us a real education on identity theft and some of the common sense tips, as well as some of the more challenging forms of identity theft that can happen. Next week, we are going to be having on the Houston Brick Club. A few of their members are coming to talk to us about adults who love Lego. So join us next week at Life at Noon, and we will see you then. Thank you so much. Bye.